Welcome back, brothers and sisters. This is the Naj coming back at you. Kind of trying to debate what we're going to call this. If you've been riding with me on this journey, this will be our fourth presentation. And the thought that came to my mind was, where once I was blind, now my brain sees, because we know that the brain is what actually sees. And what we want to do in this session is lay down the proper information that we have come to understand on this planet, right? So this is based on the first three sessions. So one would have to have participated in those, understood those, made those a part of your understanding, and then this will make more sense to you. If you're still in that cave, then it's kind of hard to see this information. But here we go. We're going to try and lay this out. This is the scientific undergirding of how our eyes work, right? The scientific information of how your eyes actually work. So let's jump right into this. On the screen, what we're looking at is the periodic table and the sun. The periodic table and the sun. And everything that human beings understand about life on this planet, we have learned through studying. That's the first thing one would have to understand. Everything that we know, human beings have had to study that, write that down and record it, and pass that information on to future generations, right? So what we've come to understand that earlier on the planet, there was just matter and energy. The matter we've studied and come to understand is the elements on the periodic table. All matter is formed from those elements of the periodic table, right? And the energy, all of the energy that reaches our planet comes from the sun. That was the main source of energy. Through study, human beings have come to understand again. What we're looking at now is the solar system. We have a solar system. They used to say that there were 9 planets. Now you know they've taken Pluto away, and now they say there's only 8 planets. And the interesting thing about the solar system, and what we're looking at is the solar system and an atom, because the solar system and the atom operate basically the same way. Now, this is scientific understanding that one would have to study, but it's the truth. The solar system is the macroscopic, the large principles. And if you study that, you'll understand the large principles, how things are working. And the sun being the main force of energy, or the main source of energy. And the interesting thing about this is the first 3 planets, or they call them terrestrial planets, right? Because they're hard. Those last 4 planets out furthest from the sun, those are gaseous planets. And then the planet on which we're on actually has all 3, what we call states of matter. It has the gas, it has the liquid, and it has the solid. And because of that, it also has life, right? The atom is the basis for everything that's made on our planet. And it operates just like the solar system. You have the positive energy in the center with the negative energy revolving around that. That's had to be studied. Human beings didn't know that. They had to study and figure that out, and we've been studying it for a long time. Most people think that we've just started getting smart in the last, since Europeans arrived over here. But the study of the atom goes way back. That information was known on the continent long ago. That's just something you'll have to study and come to understand for yourself. That takes us to the 3 states of matter, and we kind of mentioned that before. Solid, liquid, and gas, but those 3 states of matter are so important to understanding how life operates. You need those 3 states in order to have living things. We are a living thing. Those 3 states of matter operate within our bodies. You have a solid part, that's the skeletal part. You have a liquid part, that's the blood and the other forms of liquid in your body. And the gaseous part, which is your lungs, right? And all 3 of those states of matter operate within you because they're here on the planet, right? Everything that you see breaks down to something smaller. Our eyes often deceive us because we see the big thing, and most of us are focused on that. You only get to the little thing through study. Just remember that. That takes us to the 6, what they teach is there are 6 kingdoms of living things, right? The earliest form of life on the planet was bacteria, single-celled organisms. And then there's protists, so cells learn to function together. One cell bind with another, then we had 2 cells, then we had 3 cells. Then those cells learn to work together and make tissues. Life has been a process on this planet. And if you study those 6 kingdoms of life, you'll see how that process, dangerous word, evolved. But yes, it did. Bacteria, protists, fungi, and then we get to plants, and finally animals. All of those different life forms exist on our planet. And all of them have a function, something that they do for the planet. Moving on. From that, we get to the levels of organization within living things. That takes us back to the periodic table. We start with the atom. Atoms build molecules. You'll see it on the screen. Those molecules have come together and they build cells. Once cells work together, now cells are living things, right? Cells get together and they build certain kind of tissues. Tissues get together and they'll build a certain kind of organ. And then there are several organs within the human body or within living bodies, right? And then there's the organism. Again, we know this only through study. This is not something just a person walking around will just see and know. This is one of those things somebody has to learn, has to observe, study, and then teach and share with future generations. All of the information that human beings have, you have to understand, they got that from somebody studying. The problem with us and our perception, in truth, is we've been given a false history, false information of the planet, period. And so it's kind of deceiving us and has us looking in the wrong areas for the answers. Again, at the bottom of everything is the elements of the periodic table. They come together and form everything on our planet, living and non-living. That takes us back to that brain that we've been discussing. That brain and the 5 senses, your touch, taste, hearing, smell, and sight. All of those senses are trying to send information to your brain, and then your brain is figuring out what to do with that information. Quite interesting, right? That's the brain. The electromagnetic spectrum. What is that? All of the energy reaching our planet comes from the sun, right? What you're looking at on the screen is called that entire spectrum. Now, ride with me here. Human beings, our eyes have evolved to only see a very small portion of that entire spectrum. We call it the rainbow, right? But that's because your eyes are operating off of the light, not the entire spectrum. It's just the light or the energy that reaches your eye, right? And of that energy, you looking at the entire spectrum, you can see we only function or operate in a very small space. Eyes are not that great in detecting this energy. To be honest with you, that's the truth. There's a small portion of it that we can detect. So now, how does this work? Let's go deeper. What you're looking at now is a human eye. The hole in the middle is the pupil. The iris around is what gives it color, right? And the eye serves a function, right? Remember, it's sending information to your brain so your brain can tell you, the organism, what to do with it. That's what it's doing. Nothing is coming out. Energy is going into the eye. Most people think it operates the other way, but it does not. Again, looking at parts of the eye. And as you can see, the important parts, you have the optic nerve. Once the image comes into, and I'm not trying to teach you guys exactly how the eye works. You have to go to school and become an eye doctor to get all that. I just want you to get the main point, that the eye is seeing nothing. The eye is simply, the information is coming in and going to the brain, and then the brain is telling us what to do with it. How does this work? Well, there are 4 components necessary for sight, and you can test this. And I would suggest you test this, because I have my students do this also. Take a mirror, bring it close to your eye, and don't shine the light right in your eye, because they always tell us not to do that. But shine a light close to your eye and see what your pupil does. Just watch your pupil adjust to the light, because that's what it's doing. The pupil is controlling the amount of light that enters your eye. Too much light can be damaging. Not enough light, you can't see. All right? So the 4 components necessary for anyone to see is you must have a light source, you must have an object that you're looking at, and a working eye, and then a clear path between you and the object. All right? What happens when we see, and it happens so instantly or instantaneously that it's hard to imagine, but this is actually what happens. The light has to shine on the object, and off of the object, that light sends an image or bounces into your eye. The image of the thing bounces into your eye, and then it goes to your brain, and your brain will tell you what you're looking at. Again, how does that process work? The light shines on the object, bounces off the object, and then reflects back into your eye. And that's the light surrounding the image, right? And then that image, that digital, is sent to your brain, and your brain tells you, that's a tree. We want to talk about color now. We're going to take a teacher. I'm going to let someone else talk to you about light and about color and explain that, and then we're going to come back on the other side and we'll talk about what that means, okay? Check this out.
Each color has a different wavelength. Red has the longest wavelength in the spectrum of visible light, and violet has the shortest wavelength. All the other colors have wavelengths in between the two. The colors of a rainbow are always in the same order, because the colors are arranged according to their wavelengths. Red is always on the outside, because red has the longest wavelength, and violet is always on the inside, because violet has the shortest wavelength. Electromagnetic radiation with a wavelength outside the visible light spectrum is invisible to our eyes. Light with a longer wavelength than the reddest red our eyes can see is called infrared light. Light with a shorter wavelength than the most violet we can see is called ultraviolet. When we look at an object, we are actually seeing the light that is bouncing off of it. A green leaf looks green because the leaf absorbs all of the colors in the spectrum except for green, which it reflects. When the green light enters our eyes, our brain tells us it looks green. Things that look white are reflecting almost all of the visible light shining on them, and things that look black are absorbing almost all of the visible light shining on them. Light, both visible and invisible, is all around us. It travels from its source as a wave, bringing energy with it. Without light, there would be no colors. Take a look at the world around you and remember, everything you can see is just different wavelengths of reflected light.
Now that you've seen that, let's look at some other eyes in the animal kingdom, right? Because it's interesting to know that the largest eyes, the largest eyes are found in the ocean. What you're looking at is the eye of a squid. And what you have to understand is once life developed these organisms and organs, they were passed down to every species that came aboard, right? So once the eye was created, then when new species came, that organ was already present, and if a living thing needed an eye, then it got it on its DNA. You have to study that process, right? Because all living things are connected through DNA. You have to say that over and over. It is DNA which allows us to live. And then again, what you're looking at is some different eyes. The pupil, those different pupils that you're looking at and the sizes of them, the pupil increases or decreases in size because remember, it's controlling the amount of light that enters the organism. That's its function. Now, let's look at chlorophyll. kind of talk briefly about chlorophyll, the purpose and process of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is used by plants, right? And you saw the video and you understand light energy. And when we see green, right, when we're looking out at the trees and the plants, when we see green, the reason we see green is because that tree, which is a living organism, is absorbing the energy, all of that energy from the sun. And it's using all of that energy to do what it needs to do as a plant. The only wavelength that it does not use is the green one, which is why you heard green is reflected to our eyes. Purple, when you see purple berries or anything, the same thing. That living thing is using the energy from the sun and it's reflecting whichever it doesn't. And I'm sure you saw in the video that whenever we see white light, that means that our eyes are being bombarded with all of the different colors of light. So we just recognize that as white. And whenever you see black, you're looking at something that is not reflecting anything to your eye. Whenever you see something black, you're looking at an organism or a thing that is absorbing all of the energy from the sun and using it for itself. Nothing is being reflected to your eye, therefore you see it as black. That would give you a completely different understanding of the world, wouldn't it? Gave me one. Let's move on. Chlorophyll is to plants, here we go, what melanin is to living things. Chlorophyll is the molecule that allows plants to do what they do. Well, as life continued to progress, it came up with a more advanced molecule, and that would be melanin. And then it passed that on to the living things that were to come. Whenever melanin absorbs all of the energy from the sun and reflects nothing, melanin is black, right? So when you have that kind of understanding, that kind of scientific understanding, the world makes more sense to you. And we get this from studying and understanding science. Again, elements of the periodic table, that's why this is here, just to show you through study, through science, observation and study, we've come to understand what melanin is made out of and what it does. And we really need some people, some scientists to begin to study this again. Because I'm not saying I'm a doctor on it or anything. I just understand this basic stuff. Anybody can understand this basic stuff. And what we need now is for our people to begin to study this stuff again, come to understand it. We got to get hands-on. Again, at this time and on our sojourn, we have to look at everything it is that we're doing. And if it doesn't make sense, if it's not for our betterment, we need to rid ourselves of it and then go to research and study what's real. That's where we are. Let's look at another molecule. Yes, that's DNA. The chemical structure of DNA, 2, made from the elements of the periodic table, a very complicated molecule. That molecule has properties that's able to pass on to future generations. DNA, genes. Again, we need some people to begin to study DNA. What do you need to know about it? What do you and I, average person walking around, need to know about DNA? It's unique to individuals with the exception of twins. We talked about that earlier, right? It makes us what we are. All living things have DNA. So if it lives, it has DNA. All living things are connected through DNA, one way or another. We call them different species, but we know that it's a living thing if it has DNA, right? So there are many things that show the connectedness of human beings, right? And how we're connected to this planet. I would ask you to look up some terms. Ectrodactyly, look that up and find out what that is. They used to call them hermaphrodites. Now they call them intersex. Look that up and know what that is. There are some humans born today, they call them hairy humans. They have so much hair on them, it almost looks like fur, right? So we are part of this planet. That's what you have to understand. Human beings are part of this planet. All our answers are here on this planet. And there's some work that we have to do as people of color, those of us who descend from the continent, to put ourselves in the correct understanding of where we're supposed to be today and what we're supposed to be doing. Our eyes, again, have been deceived. That's the best way to say that. Our eyes have been deceived, and we're looking at a distorted portrayal of ourselves. And we need to get back to our original self. And that has to be studied. Our true history has to be studied, not just slave history. We have to study our history. You got to go back. You got to go back to that time they don't want you to go to, those ancient Egyptians, because they laid down some information and some knowledge. Believe it or not, time will tell, but it will be proven that they were actually smarter than we are today. Whereas we think human beings are on the upswing, many of us see us devolving, not going up, but going down. Knowledge is our superpower. As we go forward, we're going to seek to understand all of this, and we're going to make it plain.